Welcome back to the Not Your Mama podcast. This is your host, Kelly Bryant, and I'm joined today by Sabrina Shaheen Cronin. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. First, can you tell us your pronouns and a very important question, what emoji you most identify as?
Well, I most identify with the pronoun she,
Mhm.
and the emoji I like mostly is the smiley face emoji
Just the
because
regular smiley face?
regular, as
Oh,
simple as it is, it's still great. And it's like vanilla ice cream,
hmm.
it's
Classic.
sweet and simple, but it's classic and it's still really good.
I love that. I think that indicates a certain level of like having your stuff together. You
Well,
know,
thank you.
you like when you have a text conversation with someone and they're like, blah, you're like, oh God, like, I don't know what's happening with you.
And they throw up all over you like word salad. And it's like,
Yes,
which one comes
exactly.
first? And they don't use any grammar. They have no punctuation and you have no idea what
Yeah.
they're talking about. Yeah.
But we're gonna throw the like fire emoji and the like the dead skull emoji in there.
Oh, yeah.
So
No, I might not, I'm pretty simple, but not boring. That's for sure.
I love it. So start by telling us a little bit about yourself. You're here to talk to us about kind of the behind the scenes legal stuff that people will want to consider when having kids. So I would love for you to give us your bio. I assume you went to like lots of school.
I did. I have an undergraduate degree in just liberal arts, actually, bachelor, I should say, fine arts, also in music theater.
Oh,
And
cool.
music performance, and I did a lot of music and performance. And then I was in law school and I did an MBA at the University of Detroit, and I worked a ton. And I worked for various law firms, two large firms in the area, in the Detroit metropolitan area where I am now. And then I was a general counsel. So I was the attorney for a large company, and I did a lot of business and contracts, and I oversaw a lot of outside litigation. And then I went to the prosecutor's office for Oakland County, and I was an assistant prosecuting attorney for a little while. And then I decided to open up just my own office. I was taking it a little easier, pursuing a music career,
I was gonna say
raising
it
kids.
sounds like you were slightly busy. Like
Yeah,
working
raising.
in the prosecutor's office in Oakland County does not sound like an easy job.
Yeah, no, it was hard. It was a lot of work, busy. It definitely honed my trial skills in the courtroom all the time, trying lots of cases. And but in there also, I worked in the juvenile and neglect division for a while, and I did a lot of child abuse cases as well. And it really started to embroil a lot of passion in me for representing victims who really didn't have a voice.
Mhm.
And I also did a lot of domestic violence cases as well. And then once I left the prosecutor's office and I was taking cases here and there in family law on my own, and then my practice just really grew organically. And that's how I started to hire people to help me. And then slowly but surely and very organically, my law firm was born.
That's amazing. And you said amidst all of that, also humans were born.
Yeah, three. I have three kids,
How
and
old
they're
now?
9, 12, and 14.
That's
Yep.
wild. You're like
Yeah.
so close to not being a chauffeur anymore, though. Just like
It's
a,
still busy. I had two boys last year in AAA hockey, and with COVID, we were all over the place. Michigan wouldn't allow us to play, so we went everywhere else and all over the country. And it was crazy. It was a busy year. And my daughter's in gymnastics. And so my older son now, who's 14, is switching to football this year. So we're going to have a little less busy schedule, but
you
it's
you
busy.
can hope, but it's
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be busy.
so wait, where is your daughter in the lineup? Is she
The
the
middle.
youngest? The
She's the
middle.
middle.
My
Mhm.
daughter just started gymnastics camp at a ripe age of 2.5. Um, we are jury's still out. First week's accomplishment was just getting like a really nasty cold.
Oh, yeah,
So
from all the germs. Yeah.
I'm
Love
like,
it.
this is great. I love being back in public again. Um, but we'll see how it goes. I think she is very inclined toward movement. So
That's good. You
Yeah.
want them to be moving. They're so fun and they love that. That's
It
awesome.
is. It's interesting because I was very much a bookworm as a child. I was not a super active kid. And like, I can remember the first and last time I played a sport and I like got hit with a soccer ball and I was like, this is terrible. I'm out. So hopefully it goes better. I don't know that I'm signing up for what you've done though, because that is a lot of all over the place, all the equipment, all the like moving parts.
Every weekend. It was
Yeah.
very busy and it's tough as a single mom with a business and three
And
active children.
I'm gonna, I mean, this isn't what you're here to talk to us about, so we will get on topic, but I would love to hear a little bit about like, what is that experience like? How do you handle it?
Day by day. And if it's not in my calendar, it ain't happening. I have to plan. And sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 weeks out to plan.
Mhm,
And I don't get a lot of free time.
mhm,
And but I love my kids. I live for my kids. Everything I'm doing is for their future.
mhm,
And for my personal growth and satisfaction too.
mhm,
I want some joy and passion in my life as well.
mhm.
And it's important for them to see a happy, healthy mom,
Yeah.
strong and able to be self-reliant. And
Mhm,
I want to be an inspiration to them and a good role model, because as you know, it's not about what you say, it's what you do
mhm.
with children. So
Yeah.
um it's busy. And
Yeah.
I have a great team of people, but it's taken me a while to find that team.
Right.
I don't have family nearby.
Yeah.
And so it's tough. It can be tough.
I want to echo that for the people who didn't hear those words. Like, your kids are, youngest is 9. It's going to take a while to figure this stuff out. So if you have like a newborn, a 1-year-old at home and you're like, I am never going to get it, like I'm never going to figure this out, you will find your people. Just
Yes.
it's
Just
it's amazing what like that you're doing it all. It's
be patient with yourself, and you may make mistakes along the way, but it's okay.
yeah. So getting on topic, you talked a little bit about, wanting to kind of create a legacy for your kids in a sense of, obviously there's leading by example and teaching them from your life, but there is also the legal and the financial aspects of, as their parents, we do have a responsibility to the next generation to be stewards. I think a lot of folks view it that way. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the legal and financial considerations someone might want? I mean, I don't know how many folks I catch pre-conception, but if someone is thinking about when is it right to have kids, what do I need to do before like thinking about having kids? What are some of the legal things that folks might want to think about?
If they're in a partnership,
Yeah,
having
well,
children,
actually, it was just, I hadn't even thought of it ahead of time, but I was like, prenup is coming to mind for one. If you are part of a partnership, having some kind of a prenuptial agreement may be part of the legal planning that you have for your children. So I would love to just hear what comes to mind for you.
well, if you're not in a marital relationship, the term now that they're using is really more of a co-parenting relationship, whether it's a monogamous relationship or whether it's either heterosexual or a homosexual relationship or a lesbian relationship, whatever type of relationship you're in, you can have it's an agreement that may or may not be recognized in your jurisdiction, but it gives it the intent of something which is better for the two people and the child or children if anything were to ever dissipate later.
Mhm,
So you can have a co-parenting relationship. You can have like you said, a prenuptial is really one that is prepared prior to entering into a nuptial or your marriage.
mhm,
um, it just depends on the state you're in, number one, and
mhm,
number two, the type of relationship you're in, and really what your intention is. So whether you're in a, platonic, or whether you're in a, together. I just saw a movie like that called Together Together, actually. It was very good. But anyway, whether you're in that kind of relationship, it really depends on the agreement. But yeah, you definitely should plan ahead. And simply because you're planning doesn't mean, people say, oh, if we're doing a prenup, then we're anticipating a divorce. Well, it's being smart about things. It's kind of like you're entering into an employment agreement, or a separation agreement or a business arrangement. You don't enter into a partnership agreement without paperwork, because you want to be smart about it. And that way, when emotions are high, then you can look through everything reasonably and know that your agreement's already there and without emotion, and you can definitely go through things a lot more amicably.
So am I understanding it correctly that even if a couple is already married and maybe they don't have any kind of a prenuptial agreement, or the prenuptial agreement doesn't refer to what would happen to children in the future, you could create a co-parenting relationship depending, you'd want to talk to someone in your area, but you could do that after the fact.
Oh, you certainly can. And, sometimes it just has the effect of a contract, but it still shows the intention of the parties, which goes a long way in many courts, in many jurisdictions.
It goes a long way in many relationships. I think I speak to a lot of new parents who have contract aside, have no awareness with their partner of what the expectations are of each person in the relationship. And of course, that makes things challenging when you're staying together, but it's definitely going to make things challenging in the event that you did separate.
Well, Kelly, that's a large part of when people fight over a newborn about, like you said, expectations. That's a big thing that I say all the time. People's expectations are usually almost always never met. And that's when animosity starts, or they, start, resenting their partner. Well, he's not waking up at night. Well, she's not, doing a good job with the child, or she's neglecting the child when she goes to work, or he's, whatever it is, it's a tit for tat kind of thing. And it's this and this and this and this. And then they keep fighting until, the house crumbles. And so it's unfortunate. And then of course the child is left in the middle, and, then they're felt unwanted, uncared for, neglected. They're at fault, which is never the case. It's never the child's fault.
Right. And one thing that I can tell anyone who's in a complicated partnership relationship, I was recently listening to someone talk about the nervous system and the fact that often couples will think, oh, well, when they're newborns or when they're infants, they're not perceiving this discord. It's actually the opposite, that younger children, the younger they are, the less ability they have to regulate their own nervous system. So any discord that's going on is actually going to have a more profound effect on a younger child. So just a side note for if we're too late on this and you've already had issues in the relationship, it is worth finding someone to help you either work through those or separate, so that you can get your children into an appropriate environment, because they pick up on everything. It's not just when they're 14 or 16 that they're going to notice that you have relationship issues.
Well, and I have a lot of cases where there's physical violence, domestic violence, and it's happening when an infant is in the room. And sometimes the party that is getting abused, generally speaking, the woman, they rationalize it that, oh, thank goodness my baby was still just little. Well, they can feel that, and that is what ends up getting into their, that their program, their, their blueprint, so to speak. It's not even their subconscious, really. As they get older, it will be embedded in their subconscious. But when they're that young, it's very conscious to them. They just can't verbalize it.
Right.
So it is, like you said, it definitely matters. And so, it is very important for the two people to talk through their expectations of, what the other parent is expecting if and when they do have children, and to talk about things. And so often, Kelly, people are afraid to talk and communicate. And unfortunately, you're with your partner, you should feel safe enough to talk and express yourself and be vulnerable and open. And if you can't, then really, kind of push yourself, be brave, like Sarah Bareilles says, be brave, speak, she has a song all about it. So, and if you can't, then maybe you should examine the relationship that you're in, or that you're, maybe choosing to have a child with.
Right. Yeah. And just to quickly touch, because you mentioned that there are different types of relationships that may be having a child together. Um, and I'm sure this is going to vary vastly by area or by state or jurisdiction. But what I'm understanding is, particularly in same sex couples, it's probably something that you want to put in writing, because I'm thinking lesbian couples in particular, one parent is going to be carrying, or genetically the child may only match the DNA of one parent. So I'm assuming that's something that the court could look at and a couple might want to preempt.
Well, a lot of states, they don't have legal rights for that second parent. So in some states now, they're allowing, they call them second parent adoptions.
Mm.
And I don't like the term second parent, because one's a biological parent doesn't mean the
Yeah.
one who's not is lesser than, but our law and our legislation still hasn't really caught up with that yet. They say legislation follows, life, which unfortunately it's lacking here, but
Mhm.
hopefully in time it'll catch up. But right now, a lot of states have second parent adoptions. But in states that don't recognize that, then those co-parenting agreements that I spoke to before will help to show the intention that both parents have with respect to their child.
Mhm.
So, because in a lot of states, that second parent doesn't have legal rights.
I was going to say, yeah, they would not be viewed as the
Yeah.
parent of that child.
Right. So they need that agreement if the second parent adoption is not allowed.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge for the listeners that this is very much a place where my privilege is coming out, because it's not something I ever even considered, that like, oh my God, same-sex parents are going to have different legal rights as it pertains. Of course, we know they have different legal rights to get married and things like that, but as it pertains to their kids, a parent who very much cares about their child could be prevented in family court from having the
Mhm.
access that they rightfully should have. That's quite alarming.
Yeah. And
um
actually, I was doing a lot of research a couple weeks ago on this very topic, and Canada allows up to 4 people to have legal rights to that child. And it's because if they're
Interesting.
looking at any kind of donor, whether it's an egg or sperm donor,
Mhm.
and if the person wants to be a part of their life still, but they're not the couple originally adopting that child, it's just very interesting.
That is
So,
interesting. And I mean, it makes, of course, it would leave a donor that, maybe there's been an agreement with the couple who's becoming the parent, that, a donor is going to have certain rights. But if that relationship dissolves, then what? Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Well, one
Um,
article I read, it was the lesbian couple, and then they used the sperm of another man to biologically parent the child, and that man was actually in their lives. So it's the 3 of them were the parents, the active daily parents of this child,
mm,
who's amazingly blessed to have all this love, right? And then if that man were to ever have a partner, then that partner could potentially be the fourth.
yeah, be
So
essentially like a
that's how
step
they see it.
parent.
But
Yeah.
that's obviously a very idealistic situation. Not all of them are that way, but
Yeah.
some people would be critical of that. But in my opinion, I feel like that baby is blessed to have
Yeah.
that much love.
Right.
So,
So these are some things that people might want to think about before having a child. Someone has just found out they're pregnant. Let's say we talked a little bit before we started recording that, many of my listeners are working parents, so they're breadwinners in their household. What are some things, some kind of like legal ducks that they might want to start putting in a row before having a kid?
before they
So they're
think,
they're pregnant, but they know they're going to have a kid.
they know they're going to have a child, they need to look for childcare. They need to consider whether that employer will allow for any kind of, pregnancy leave, or, on either side, whether, and if they're both working, well,
Mhm,
then when does it start for the mom giving birth, and does the dad get it as well?
mhm,
Does short-term disability come into play?
mhm,
What kind of payment plan will there need to be?
mhm,
Do they even have short-term disability?
mhm.
And so all these things they really should consider. Um, and a lot of those things are, people don't really think about. They're not in the forefront of someone's mind. So those things are important. And really the daycare, the things that will cause stress to the parents, like those items, those imminent ones, and also setting aside money, because diapers are very expensive and formula is expensive if you're not going to be nursing. And you don't know if your child has certain allergies or intolerances. And if that's the case, you may need to supplement if you are nursing, or, there's a lot of extra things. And then of course, insurance, do you have proper health insurance to not only see the mom through the pregnancy, but then also the birth of the baby? And then what if something happens with the baby, and a pediatrician, and then you have to think about life insurance, and you need a power of attorney for medical care. There's so many things. Those are the legal sides of it.
Can we talk a little bit about, I don't know to what extent you're comfortable speaking to it, but because obviously every situation is going to be very different. So, we'll add the disclaimer. Sabrina is not your lawyer. Do not
I'm not your lawyer. No attorney-client privilege has come into play here.
Don't take her word for it. But I know sometimes
you can call me.
Yes, and we will get people's information on how to do that. But I do think sometimes people don't even know where to start on Google, or they feel uncomfortable going to a professional because they're like, I'm going to go pay someone several $100s an hour, and I'm going to ask them what is life insurance? So can you kind of define some of these things or where they might come into play?
Well, for life insurance, for instance.
Yeah. So yes, life insurance for one. Another one would be a will. What about a living will? What is a medical power of attorney? All of these things, I think, if we've had parents who are caring for aging grandparents, we maybe are familiar with some of these terms, but what does that have to do with having a child?
So it's important when there is any kind of a medical decision that a power of attorney is in place for you. That means that, let's just say, Kelly, you ended up having to have a procedure done and you didn't have a power of attorney, but you wanted one because you wanted your husband to be able to tell the medical professionals what you would like or what should be done in the event that you can't speak, or you're under anesthesia, or they don't know what to do in a certain situation. Then you have it's a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, that says that your husband has the power to act as your agent, telling the hospital or the doctors what it is that they should do to provide for you the best care that you would want.
Which is a conversation that everyone should have with their partner, by the way.
Yeah. And that is a power of attorney that is in place only when you're alive. When you pass, powers go away. Those powers go away. So that's why most people think of estate plan, like you said, for elderly people, but it's very important, especially when you're starting to have a family with, children involved. You definitely need to have these protections so that people know your voice when you can't speak for yourself. And
this does happen, I won't say routinely in childbirth, but it does. I'm thinking of, if anyone wants to go back and listen to, I believe it was Brittany's episode where she had postpartum preeclampsia and essentially passed out, was in and out of consciousness postpartum, and no one knew, no one was telling her family what was going on. And so it may be your partner who you want to be that person. It may be someone, if you know that your partner is emotional and is not going to be, it's their child too, right? So maybe it's a different person who you want to designate. Who would it be by default? Would it just be your partner, or what would happen if you didn't have one?
Well, if you didn't have one, yes, it would be your spouse. But if you weren't married, they could not legally ask your spouse. For instance, I have actually a very compelling story for those parents who have either freshmen in college or sophomores in college that are now turning 18 or 19. And we had a client that the child got into a car accident and ended up in the hospital. In the hospital, by law, because HIPAA laws are very strict now, they could not talk to the parent about their own child because they did not have that power of attorney, because once you turn 18, you're a legal adult. And the hospital and doctor cannot talk to the parent in that instance. As long as they're minors, then absolutely they can.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still important for adults to have powers of attorney. Let's just say for a babysitter. You know, if you're out of town and your babysitter's taking your child, or let's just say a grandparent is taking your child to a doctor, most often that healthcare provider will need that piece of paper or permission, somehow a very formalized permission slip, basically letting them talk to that other person.
Sabrina, I'm literally right now going, oh crap. Like my mom is taking my daughter out of state for 2 weeks at the end of the summer. Like,
you should have a power of attorney drafted. I'm not kidding.
yeah,
And
no, absolutely.
giving your mom the power
Yep.
to do those things for your daughter.
Yeah. And these are things that we don't think about, right? And we are very blessed to not have had to think about them if we haven't. I assume you have no such naivete anymore.
No, not anymore. But as a new mom, you know,
Yeah.
even though I was a lawyer and still am, obviously, I didn't realize. But you can have it for a finite period of time. For those of you out there listening who are, you know, afraid to give this huge power to someone, you can do it. Like, let's just say for your mom going away for that finite period of time, you can have that power of attorney be in existence just for that 2-week period. You know, it doesn't have to be forever.
Right. And same, I would assume, you know, it's perhaps you have another family member, maybe it's not your partner who you want to designate during birth. Maybe you have a sibling or a parent or someone who you would like to designate. All of those people are going to be pretty emotionally invested as well.
And that's a great point to make, because a lot of times people want that person right next to them to be that agent for them. But, you know, estate planning attorneys will sometimes advise that perhaps the person that you want to designate with that power shouldn't be so emotionally invested, so that they are a little more, you know, reasonably thinking or logically thinking without the emotion involved.
Okay. So if someone is, I would assume this is even more important if someone is considered high risk, or if someone is planning a C-section, for example, where they know that they're going to have a surgical procedure. So these are all things that people can take to their attorney or reach out to you for more kind of individualized plans. So that's so living will and power of attorney, same thing, different things?
It depends on the state. And a living will is really another way of saying just what your intentions are, you know, and those things can be more generalized. It wouldn't be such a finite agreement. And a lot of times hospitals, before going into a procedure, whether it's elective or a necessary medical procedure, they want that for their files, just in the event that something were to happen, they'll know who to contact. And, you know, it's important to find people who are logistically available too, not just emotionally capable of handling it. That's why you want to choose someone who is older, not, you know, I know a lot of people want to choose their children or their, you know, cousins, or, you know, someone that they feel emotionally close to, which is great. They need to know your wishes, but they need to be old enough and mature enough to be able to handle the stress of it, and also logistically available to take the call.
Right.
So
this is something that's been discussed. I know in my family, for my parents have several kids, but we all have different gifts, right? My oldest brother is a lawyer, but is not local, right? So that's like a consideration. If they were going to go in for a routine procedure, they would certainly not have him be the, you know, power of attorney. But for, you know, their will, he can definitely, you know, have a more higher authority. I don't know, like, that sounds like God. I'm not talking about God, but, you know, something where it's like, okay, that's a big event. We know that he's going to be available. He's going to make himself available. That there is that logistical consideration as well.
And mind you too, Kelly, they have these powers of attorney for financial affairs too.
Yes. And I was going to ask you about that. So that I assume is less relevant for our audience, and that's much more like people who maybe are experiencing dementia or are less able to handle their own affairs.
Right.
So that's a really great distinction that people, I know I've not I guess that makes sense logically, but I hadn't considered that there was a difference between a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney versus a, what would it be called? A financial power of attorney?
Mhm.
Um, because they're pretty much used interchangeably with older folks. They're usually the same person. Um, Tell us a little bit about wills. So not living wills, but dying wills. Is that something that you recommend every adult walking around has? Is it, how does that change when you have children?
When you have children, it's important to know, and really, even if you don't have children, it's important to know your wishes to really it safeguards other people when they're having to take care of your stuff that you've left behind
Mm,
after you pass. And some people really do not like to talk about it. Some people really don't like this topic. They don't, the people having to do a will or thinking about doing a will don't really want to do it because they say they don't want to burden their children with it. Well, it's more of a burden if you don't have one,
mhm,
because then the children are left to guessing what
mhm,
they should do. More often than not, I've seen so many families get extremely fraught, and there's so much tension and strife among family members when there's no will or no estate plan, because this person wants that, this person thinks they should do this with it, sell the house, no, don't sell the house, I want the house, no, I want the house, I want this car, no, I want this, dishes or whatever it is, the jewelry, the
mhm,
guns, whatever it is that that person or the couple are leaving behind
mhm,
after their passing. It can be a lot of tension in families.
mhm,
And the importance of a properly prepared estate plan really takes that burden off the family members who are left after the passing of their loved one. And I really can't emphasize that enough, that it's not a burden it when to do one, it's a burden not to do one. And although people don't want to look at their own morbidity, and it's just not a fun thing to discuss. It should be done. And in most states, they need a trust to avoid probate, not just a will. A will not avoid probate, and probate is just another fancy name for court.
right. Which can be a real issue if you have young children who need care. That
Yes.
those children, like they are going to have financial needs
Uh-huh.
that can't wait if your um, assets are tied up in probate. So can you define probate?
Well, probate is court. Like I was saying, that, one party has to start uh, basically a lawsuit, although it's not really, you're not suing anyone. You're having to go to court to figure out what needs to be done with these assets. Because, I mean, if you die intestate, meaning without a will, then the court will then determine where everything goes. And sometimes things don't go the way you would hope.
So even if I you know have a will and it says exactly what should go where, and um, everyone who's involved would agree, it's not like they can just go empty my bank account. Like it still has to go to court, go through
Yes,
probate unless there's a trust.
yes. And the will helps to show the intention of the parties, but it doesn't avoid probate in most states.
Mhm.
And in Michigan, you need a trust.
Okay. So I think definitely a piece of pushback that I would expect to hear from other folks my age is like, Sabrina, I don't have 12 cars that my 1 and 4-year-old are going to be fighting over. I don't have, a ton of assets. I just expect that if I die, everything's going to just go to my partner and I don't have to deal with this. So why would I need a document saying that?
Well, who would you want your guardian to be in the event that let's just say you and your spouse die in a car accident or a cruise ship or a boat or a fishing expedition, whatever it is, a plane, who knows? You need to know who will be protecting your child and where will the money go.
Mhm.
how can that child, without a trust, how can that child who's younger, and below 18, actually manage all the money that may befall him or her from a life insurance plan? And this is where life insurance comes in handy, because without a life insurance, unless you're really wealthy and have lots of disposable income all saved in, a bank account or stocks. Well, even, let's just say you did have stocks and you have a trust. How would your little infant get all those stocks? So a family
I'm picturing
member,
my toddler with like stickers. Right? That is how it would be managed. There would be Princess Anna stickers.
Well, a family member would have to go to court to say that this money from this stock or bond or whatever will go to this young child, but we will keep it for him or her. I mean, there's a lot of steps involved.
And that process is also not going to be free for your family member, whoever is.
Very expensive, a lot of headache, an estate has to be open. There's a lot of steps involved.
So,
and then interested parties all have to be contacted, and then there could be fighting among the parties. It's a very layered, lots of steps.
So even in a simple estate, I'll give the example because I think we're pretty straightforward. Me and my husband, everything we own is shared. We don't have like very complicated financial lives, but we do have one kid. If both of us were to die, essentially we would still want some kind of a document saying, these are our assets. This is how we want them to be held and managed until she is of an age. I know lots of people put in, because they don't want their 18-year-old getting everything all at once. A lot of people do put in those kind of considerations. So even someone with a relatively simple financial situation would still want to do that.
Absolutely.
And it becomes more complex. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, Kelly, the only time you really wouldn't need one per se is if your child or children are grown and you and your husband own a home and both of your names are on the deed. Then if he were to pass or you were to pass, the house would automatically go to you because your name is on the deed. Anytime your name is on something or you are co-owners of something, whether it's a bank account, a financial plan, if you're the beneficiary of his, life insurance,
retirement account,
as long as your name is on that, that's fine. Or even let's just say, put your child's name on any one of these plans and she's a beneficiary. Well, you still need some sort of document instructing how that money will be held while she's still a minor. But if your children are grown and your name is on everything, the only time that might not work is if you both pass at the same time in the same accident or very similar 1 minute after another, or, then the laws get kind of complicated if it's within hours of each other and whose family member gets what, when, that can get involved.
And what I was going to start saying is it's very straightforward when my husband and I share one child and that's it. But of course, when you get into blended families, then there's, this person's assets belong to two separate sets of children, but this person's assets belong to only this child. So that's definitely something people would consider. And I would assume, again, huge consideration here for domestic partnerships as opposed to marriages. And that's going to be different in every state.
Huge discussions and values and tension when we're talking about blended families, lots and lots of tension. And if proper estate planning is not done, in my career, I have seen a lot of litigation in probate court over family disputes with blended families. When it's not properly planned, because the parents want to avoid it because they want that, almost like that ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
Yeah.
They put their head in the sand a little bit.
So, and I think that something that I value, speaking from personal experience, that my husband's an only child, and all of our parents have been very clear, very straightforward about their intentions. They've said, this is what's in our will. This is what you can expect. This is how we'd want things to be. And you were talking about just like, it is a gift to your children to have a will, but it's also a gift to your children to tell them what's in it ahead of time so that they're not finding out when you die that they have no rights to the vacation home. that, that might be something they want to emotionally process a lot sooner. And so it is reassuring, I don't know how many, I know most of the people listening probably are not parents of older adult children, but we do have parents, and it is a conversation that may be worth having, just saying, hey, do you have a will? What would you want me to do with your possessions?
It's funny. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but they should, and it's so true that people's feelings definitely get hurt. And I think it's interesting that the people drafting the wills or the estate plan, they don't want to express to their children what they're doing.
They don't want to say, you're my least favorite.
Yeah.
I don't trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't want to, I don't know. They're afraid to, they don't want to express it. They don't want to tell them who they're leaving what to for whatever reason. And it should be a discussion. Yeah. Healthy families have no secrets, right? They, they say the healthier you are, the less secrets you keep or the less secrets you have. And I think an open, honest communication or dialogue should be had. The problem with that then is one, child wants to outdo the other child. They want to butter up the parent and get whatever. You see, like in all those movies.
I was going to say, I think this is movies. I don't know if this is, do you see this in your office very often?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's real.
That's amazing.
Say art imitates life or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's say someone is like having their come to Jesus moment and they're like, oh my God, I am not prepared. Like, let's say they have a small child or two now. Where do they start? How do they find someone? How can they contact you? You're in Michigan. What do they do? Where should people start with all of it? I assume I just go to what's it called? LegalZoom. Just plug in my name and that's it.
Well, LegalZoom would prepare documents for you, but they're very generic. And I'm not going to say anything bad about LegalZoom because it has its purpose, for people who just want a generic
better document. Than nothing, maybe, but
well, sometimes it's
worse.
Sometimes having something bad is worse than having.
Oh God! So
that's why.
How do we get something good? Tell us how to get something good.
Yeah, right. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's better than nothing. It just depends on your situation. But it's important to go to someone that you feel comfortable with. And it's like a doctor. Sometimes you want to go to see 2 or 3 different, lawyers that to see if you click with them, because you have to feel comfortable and safe to express yourself, to tell them your wishes, to tell them what you want. And if you don't feel comfortable, then you shouldn't be there. A lot of people say, well, I went to my lawyer because I knew he'd fight for me, but I didn't feel comfortable telling him what I'd want. Well, then how would he know how to fight for you if you don't feel it's, but they think they're getting something and they're not, or they have this idea that they need to go for something and they really just
a relationship over reputation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not necessarily the most expensive one who's the best, right? I know a lot of very expensive law firms out there that don't provide the quality work or the attention that the client wants. So, you want to go somewhere where you feel like your needs are being met, you're feeling heard and safe and secure.
So do I just call a law firm up and say, hey, can we speed date? Like, I want to get to know you. Am I going to pay to do a consultation? How does that work?
Yeah, no, sometimes you can get referrals from friends. You can go online, the internet, just do a search, estate planning attorneys. And most oftentimes you can find several that will pop up and you give them a call and just just start making calls and asking questions. How many, estate plans do you do? Who handles them? Obviously, it's important to go to someone that you feel perhaps you've heard about, or a friend or a family member has gone to and really liked. Referrals are always good to get, just like you do with doctors. And every lawyer has his or her own specialty. And certain lawyers do certain things. Certain law firms are more known for, handling various things, but you'll find someone that you like. And then, pricing is always relevant. So you got to
Mhm,
ask about cost. And
mhm,
usually consultations are free, but many times they're not. It just depends on the firm.
mhm,
So just, make sure you ask a lot of questions before you schedule that appointment to know if you owe money for the consultation or not. And
mhm,
now more and more attorneys are doing consultations via Zoom
mhm.
or a simple phone call. So it can save you some time that way as well.
Wonderful. And I have no idea if this is true. You can tell me. I know sometimes you'll see like the billboard of someone's face and it's like DUI, criminal, da 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 da, family court, blah, 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 and then somewhere along the line it'll say like estate planning. Is it generally a good rule of thumb? Like the first thing they say is like the thing they're really good at?
Typically, I mean, most of those billboard attorneys are personal injury lawyers,
Billboard
and
attorneys. I like that as a technical
billboard
term.
attorneys, a lot of the attorneys that advertise on billboards are more personal injury related.
Mhm,
Some of them are not. Some of them do family law or estate planning, workers' compensation, which still is a personal injury type of a side of, law. But larger firms do have different areas of
mhm,
practice that they handle. Like in my firm, we do a lot of family law, and under the family law umbrella, I consider estate planning. Some
mhm.
people don't, but we have estate planning
Makes
and
sense. Yeah.
probate. That's kind of one, and then we do a lot of business and we do personal injury. So those are our wheelhouses,
Mhm,
but someone's areas of interest or areas of specialty, might be here, but then in the firm, they have another attorney that does estate planning. It just depends on the law firm. If you're a solo practitioner though, it's hard to be,
great at
a
everything.
jack of all trades. And they say jack of all trades, master of none. So it's
Mhm,
really hard to be really, really good if you're practicing multiple areas. If one attorney is practicing many, many, many areas, I would suggest going to that attorney only for the area that he or she feels most,
mhm,
confident in, or really, really good at or excels at, because they can't, it's almost impossible to excel at multiple areas.
mhm. Yeah, and I
So
think that is one. Uh, of course, we have a relationship with someone, and it you want to keep all your business with one person. They already know everything, which is really nice that you're doing, family law with the estate. Like, they're all in the same. If you're doing prenuptial agreement or co-parenting agreement, or uh, you've handled someone's divorce and they're remarrying, like it's all very intertwined. So it's
yes,
nice to have that all handled kind of by one person rather than, hi, here's everything in my closet. Like, let's talk about
right.
my whole personal life. Um,
But if they needed help, let's just say with a business transaction,
mhm,
or an immigration is very highly specialized, so don't,
mhm,
it just really depends. Or let's just say an attempted assault, or a pretty intense criminal matter. Sometimes certain attorneys, general practitioners, they call them,
mhm,
can handle minor, criminal
mhm,
offenses, can handle a divorce that's not too complicated,
mhm,
can handle an estate plan that's not too complicated.
mhm,
But the more sophisticated you get in each area,
mhm.
I highly recommend you see a specialist.
Yeah. Yeah, same as a doctor, right?
Right, right.
Nobody, I mean, they actually have family practice doctors who deliver babies and see people through the whole spectrum, but they probably don't do like a ton of really complicated cases.
Right.
And they refer those out.
Yeah, like if someone comes to a doctor with, skin issue, or, then they refer them to a dermatologist, or, that they can't handle themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, if people want to find you, learn more from you, potentially work with you, where can they find you?
Well, my office is in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, but we practice all over Michigan. I'm licensed in New York and Illinois as well. And my local number is 248-258-3500, croninlawfirm.com. And my 800 number is 855 call Cronin.
And
So
Cronin is
social media.
Cronin.
Yes.
in case anyone is doing that verbally. And social media?
All social media platforms and
Cronin
YouTube.
Law. Say that again. Cronin Law.
Cronin, Cronin law firm. And then under Sabrina Shaheen Cronin as well.
Amazing.
On LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
Twitter, you tweet about law?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting more into that. Yeah.
I'm impressed. I consider getting a Twitter every now and then I'm just like, I'm maxed out on my platforms.
It's a lot, but for that, I know I do. It's like it's just finding a great team. And I'm very blessed with a great team. So.
Anything else that we haven't discussed that you're like, oh my God, the pregnant people need to know XYZ, or the postpartum people need to hear this because Kelly didn't ask me?
Kelly, there's so much. And I just want people to know that if you're trying to be perfect, or if you're trying to wait for the right time, if you're trying to do something, whatever, no one's perfect. Nothing's perfect. Everything, happens in its own time. The cliche, you are where you're meant to be right now, is so true. It's a cliche for a reason, because it's there to allow you to give yourself a break, take a deep breath. You're doing just fine. And if you don't have all these little things in place, it's okay. You're listening to a great podcast to inform you.
We'll do the best we can.
Yes, to educate you, and education is empowerment. And the more you know, the more you learn, the more you'll grow and understand. And, being a parent is just, it's an awesome experience. And every day is a new learning experience. And you just love every minute of it. And, you're going to make mistakes because we're all human, and we do. Yeah. But your children will be just fine. Love them and nurture them, and
they will be okay.
Everything will fall into place. Yeah.
And on this topic, the last thing that I will say is that I know each of these things that we've slowly put in order for ourselves, it's like every time I see the life insurance come through on my credit card bill, I like breathe a sigh of relief. It's like the best money I spend every month to just like have that feeling that like everything is fine. And so I'm not suggesting that like if you have postpartum mood and anxiety disorders that you can just like get a will and then you'll feel better. But the more that things are financially provided for, that your child is going to be cared for by who you intend for them to, that they're going to have what they need, the more space you have to actually be present and to do the parenting as opposed to the worrying.
That's a great point, because people often sort of put it on the back burner and procrastinate in drafting their will or their trust or the power of attorney, because they think, oh, I'll get to it another time. Well, then it's always in the back of your mind. Don't procrastinate, just do it, because procrastination is a form of self-sabotage, right? So just do it in the moment, get it done, or take a few minutes every day and sort of think about it and take notes, find a lawyer, put it down on paper, but do it. And then you'll have peace of mind. Like you said, you get a sigh of relief every time you have to pay that life insurance premium. But also what someone really needs to know listening to this is, simply because you have an estate plan, that if you have a trust, it has to be funded in order for it to work. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper. And what that means to be funded is that every major account that you have that you want to go through that trust to avoid probate has to be in the name of that trust, or it won't qualify. So, and if you have any other questions about
that, and that's an easy thing to do. Not easy, but like you could do that in 5 minutes a day. Just one account, get that set up.
Yes, but people don't understand that. And a lot of lawyers are remiss in telling their client that. And then unfortunately, people still have to go to probate. So those are the things that, you just really need to think through and do, and but you'll get it done.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand that. Yeah.
I think that this has been really empowering. I think the more that people know, the more they do feel empowered to do a little something, because it can kind of feel like this big, nasty thing that you just don't want to look at because you don't understand it. So I really, really appreciate your time, Sabrina. Thank you so much for helping us all feel like a little bit smarter and a little bit more prepared.
Well, thanks for having me, Kelly, and you can call me anytime. I'm happy to talk with you.
Love it.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks.